A very good morning, afternoon, or evening to all of you. Um, this is going to be my first video in this new Mythic Plus series. I know that Mythic Plus is going to is slowly starting to become more of a thing, also recognized by Blizzard in the future. And when I got into the whole Mythic Plus thing, I mainly did it for fun. I did it to get better at it. I did it to enjoy the game more. I'm not too big a fan of mythic raiding necessarily, uh, as it is with 20 people, so you have all the hassle of getting 20 people together. But Mythic Plus is a good way of getting rid of my competitive nature, so I can just enjoy the raids as they are. But myself, I am Leondor. I'm a Gnome Death Knight from Emerald Dream. I'm currently number 194 in the world. As a tank, I don't do as well as DPS, even though that's my main spec officially. But tanking's pretty fun. And tanking Mythic Plus is a nice challenge. Now, the reason that I'm recording this video is because whenever I look for Blood DK guides, or whenever I try to find material to improve my gameplay, it's pretty hard to find something from a tank perspective. So I've been recording a couple of runs lately. I'll try to add a Vault of the Wardens 19 run as well later on as my next video. So yeah, I've started recording my videos, my runs, and I decided to give commentary on the runs. The run for today is a +20 lower Kara. I'll show you the entirety of the first bit, as it was a pretty clean run, and it shows quite a bit on how to approach this dungeon. Then I'll show you our first wipe on Morose. I'll leave out the 40 minutes after that of wiping, and then I'll show you guys the kill as well. So let's give it a go. I'll start off at the start. I'll kind of walk you guys through as we're going. Alright, so we're starting off here. Ignore my friends list. What you can see is that I'm starting off with a rune, with food, and with the Fell Focuser. After our first death, you'll see that I activate a flask then. The reason that I'm starting off with the Fell Focuser is because you don't necessarily just need stamina in a run. You also don't necessarily just need strength in the run. So the Fell Focuser is a nice way to get half of both flasks instead of just going balls deep into one flask. We killed those first two ads. I didn't take one of them, even though I can as a Death Knight, because I don't necessarily think it's worth. Pets do a ridiculously low amount of damage in Mythic Plus, so you would only really want to take a pet that has a useful ability. And the scary bit is if you do end up dying, and if it's only the tank that dies. If you're at a boss fight and the boss is at like 5% health, and your tank ends up dying, and you release its pet, you might just get wiped, because the pet also starts destroying people. Especially on fortified weeks, it's slightly scarier. I pulled this pack here, and I pulled them slightly back so that we could finish them off and kill them, and have our rogue distract the pack so they stand still for a while. just so that we don't have to either end up taking both or taking neither. Doing this pack, popping all of my cooldowns. I'm using Moonglaives as well. I use Moonglaives on AoE Trash, and I use a Versatility stat stick on single target boss fights. Whenever you see this thing in the floor, it is the blue arrow. That is my Hunter's Binding Shot. I know that my Hunter uses Cephas a lot of the time, as he is running a crit focus build. So when you do see the thing in the floor, you can actively try to drag out all of the mobs. Just to help your Hunter proc his Cephas, or just to stun and add. I'll go slightly back a couple of seconds. To here. What you can see is that the Pennies from Heaven was almost finished with its cast, and I saved my Death Grip until it just had finished the cast. Seeing that it is a channeled ability, you can just safely interrupt almost every single channeled ability by using your Death Grip right after the cast. If it's a cast that's unstunnable, you could almost always use your Death Grip to stop a merely stunnable cast as well, just because displacement also cancels nearly every single cast. The reason why I wait until after they finish the cast is because some mobs, when they do a cast, they will instantly start recasting their ability if you displace them or knock them back during their cast. However, if you let them finish their initial cast and then grip them over, 90% of those casts or of those mobs don't start recasting their cast. I am taking this quarter slightly slowly, as you can see. I've deactivated the Discord sound from the run. I might post the entire run in its entirety for those interested. But we had our druid stealth over to the opera house to start off the roleplay. Right here we walked in, and we walked in slightly too quickly, so our druid was still drinking. We had to cancel his drink because otherwise he might get locked out. That was a mistake on our part. Luckily, this fight is not that AoE damage intensive, nor is it that single target intensive. So it ended up not being that big of a deal. The week that we're doing this in is a Teeming Necrotic Tyranical week. So bosses are pretty scary. I think we got this 20 key by finishing a 19 Halls of Valor in time. But Tyrannical weeks do get slightly scarier on some boss fights when you do have that Necrotic. Necrotic means that every single time you get attacked, every single time you get melee swung, because spells don't count. So every time you get melee swung by an ad, you get a stacking debuff. You can see the stacking debuff right here in my screen. I've got 4 stacks right now, and every single stack reduces the healing done to you and gives you a very minor dot. Now the dot itself is very it's not very interesting. It doesn't hurt a lot. It does stack up really highly sometimes if you pull a lot of mobs in, let's say the dragon boss in Darkheart Thicket. If you end up pulling a lot of those little dragons and messing up there, then you might just wipe because your tank gets destroyed. The maximum number of stacks you can really go up to is, I think, 34. At 34 you get minus 100% healing done, and minus 100% absorbs done. So when you do get to that point, you'll either have to run away or you'll have to stand your ground and fight if it's a situation where you cannot remove your stacks. I'm doing this as a Blood Death Knight, and there is a way to get rid of your stacks as a Blood DK. I've got my anti-magic shell right here on control 4, and the legendary I'm using during this fight is the anti-magic shell cloak. Now with the anti-magic shell cloak, what it does is it extends your anti-magic shell duration by twice the amount. So anti-magic shell regularly would last for 5 seconds. With the cloak, it will last for 10 seconds. The debuff, when you get it freshly applied, will also last for 10 seconds. And the way that anti-magic shell is worded means that you will not gain any more stacks of any harmful ability, which Necrotic is. So you can very, very reliably drop down your stacks as a Blood DK if you have the cloak activated. You just have to make sure that you don't take any other magic damage from any source. What I'm doing now is I'm positioning myself right next to the door. I told my group that I was going to grab some trash and that they could just stay back while I grab them. One of the reasons I'm doing it is because in the corridor there's almost no place to get rid of your stacks of Necrotic. But also, oh wait, if we go back now, let's go back slightly to 7:59. In like 20 seconds, we'll have our first wipe, and if you see here, do you see those? Those health bars beneath us, with the Singer pack as well, just came walking towards us. That ends up being our first wipe because I was busy tanking these guys, so I didn't see it happen. And now we are getting overwhelmed with extra trash as well. Had to respond to it on the fly, but these Singers are extremely dangerous. And you can see here that I went up to 50 stacks just because there's too much trash going on. We luckily did kill our initial trash pack, or most of our initial trash pack. So we did get some of the percent, but we definitely didn't get enough. And at the end of the run, you can see that we are about 10% low on percentage. Why it happened, I'm still not sure. I do know that if you have a bear tank that's using Luffas, it sometimes happens. If you have a cat that uses Moonkin Affinity, or Balance Affinity, I guess, and Luffas, it sometimes happens because the thrash radius then gets so big. And this is where you see that I went for a stamina flask after our first wave. Sometimes it also happens if you have an arcane mage that's casting arcane explosion, because it is a circle around them. So if they are stood slightly poorly, right here I'm jumping, by the way, because I'm trying to get the guest pack from downstairs. And then, yeah, so sometimes you just randomly pull extra trash after Opera. It happens, you have to have a backup plan. Our backup plan is that we will then wipe it and at the entrance take a left turn. And then continue on along the path that you can see here. A great way to get rid of ads while you're tanking is to be stood on some sort of platform. As long as the ads don't have a frontal cleave effect, because of course you don't want to destroy any melee DPS that you have with you. But given that you don't have any mobs that have a cleave effect, you can actually jump off of places where then the ads will have to walk all the way around and walk the regular way off the stairs. It's very good in a in a scenario where, as a DK, you need to drop some form of stacks, or you need to get rid of the mobs because you have no runic power and no runes, and you are almost dead, or you've just hit Purgatory but you don't have enough runic power to heal yourself up. You can't jump off stuff to make sure that you don't have any more incoming damage, and that the healer will be able to heal you up fully. This quarter we're also taking slightly slowly, and you'll see our rogues cheat death proc in a minute. It's because of these wholesome hosts and these ladies. They are extremely lethal, absolutely extremely lethal. The mass script there was just used as an AoE interrupt, basically. One of these hosts here, I think it's this one, is going to get a whale off, and our rogue's cheat death there procced. If she would have cast it on any other character, that character would have just gotten one shot. It's not that big of a deal if you go to dungeons anywhere below, like, let's say a plus 15, maybe a plus 14, because the trash will usually die quick enough that the host is host high, I guess, maybe, I don't know, won't get one of their casts off. But the higher you go, the more scary it is. Right here, I'm going to pull all of this trash and position myself right here next to the door. As you can see here, for those Blood DKs, I am using Rune Tap. Rune Tap is one of my favorite abilities for DK. I'm not too big of a fan of Fall Bulwark because, as you can see, I'm not as good at maintaining bone stacks as I kind of want to be. And for very high Tyranical keys, I also play with Spectral Deflection. And Spectral Deflection means that if you get hit for more than 25% of your health, the hit will absorb another stack of Bone Shield. So it has very strong anti-synergy with Fall Bulwark. And when you do decently big pulls, Rune Tap just becomes so much better, because you can basically just take 40% damage less for 3 seconds, which means that for about 6 seconds of your trash pack pull, you can take minus 40% damage. And if your trash pack lasts for more than 6 seconds, you can combo any of your other defensive cooldowns as well. Vampire Blood is one of those cooldowns that is extremely underused by tanks that don't necessarily know that well what they're doing. Vampire Blood can be up for about half of the time that you do a run, or that you are in a dungeon, because in the talent tree there is one talent that reduces the cooldown of Rune Tap every single time that you spend runic power. Sorry, Rune Tap. The cooldown of Vampiric Blood every time that you spend runic power. Red Thirst, I think it's called. Right now you can see me, by the way, you can see me holding on consumption. I'm holding on it because I'm holding on to it because the 20% leech effect that it gives is extremely good in the mass repentance phase here. Anytime that you see me hold on to my consumption is usually because I want to abuse that 20% leech. If you look at the healing current fight here, you can see that the DPS are slowly but surely increasing in HPS, and increasing pretty severely as well. If you just look at their healing done, our mage just went from 7 million to like 9.5 million, and that is almost completely because of leech. So you want to actively use your consumption ability when you do high mythic pluses to try to help mitigate some of the damage that's gone on. You can also see that our Druid for Life Druid here has done about 22 million DPS. Sorry, DPS, 22 million damage, which is partly because he gets helped out with that consumption ability, so he doesn't have to heal as much as he usually does. On lower keys, we very often run with Feral Affinity as well, just because there's positions in, or like there's timings within a raid or within a dungeon that you don't like actively have to heal. And as a healer, if you're just if you're just stood still and you're not healing at all, then you are wasting DPS. If you don't actively have to heal, you need to actively DPS as a healer. Or you need to... I'm trying to jump over the railing here, but I can't because I'm a gnome. Or you need to actively be preparing for another wave of incoming damage. Like if you know that the Mass Repentance is incoming and you are a Resto Druid, it's usually a pretty good idea to start pre-hotting everybody about 5 or so seconds before the ability itself comes in. Just so that you don't get caught off guard by the ability itself. But if you know that within, let's say, what, 20 seconds, there's not that much damage going on, or there's not that much damage incoming, you can just cast Wrath, I guess, right? Or in his case, if he is Cat Affinity, he can go in for a couple of Ferocious Bites. I'm taking these Wardens here because we still have 6 minutes on Heroism, and we want to use it on the horse as well. We're going quick enough here that we can actually harrow on all 4 of the bosses. We harrowed on Opera, on the Maiden. We are going to harrow on the horse as well, and we want to harrow on Morose. Unfortunately, you'll be able to see that we are slightly short of being able to harrow, because if you do Morose, then you kind of want to harrow at the start, just so that you can pull 2 of the guests and Morose itself, and then have your DPS delete the guests. However, we are going to not be in that position. We will have about 2 minutes of harrow left, harrow cooldown left, when we do pull Morose at the end. Right here, if I would turn on my sound, you can hear me complaining that I didn't go back into my Necrotic set. I have a couple of sets on my Blood DK. For the Necrotic week, I use... oh god dang. I use the Necrotic set that's right here, if you'll look in a second. And I'll use the boss set that I have here. The Necrotic set has my Moonglaves in it, and the boss set has a verse stat stick. But I did swap into the boss one before Maiden, but I forgot to swap back into it for this trash. So in a second you'll see me click my Necrotic set right there, and then you see me pull this one stable hand. I'm doing it because I want to wait very shortly on the cooldown of Glaives, because I'll want to use Glaives on one of the 2 apprentice packs back there. I position myself right there because that is the optimal way to get the apprentices and the journeymans stacked up together. I see right here, you can see the purple stuff under their feet. That means that they have been binding shotted, binding shat, binding something. And just by simply walking back, you can proc the Binding Shot there to help out your healer, basically, because every single time that you stun something, it won't do damage to you during the stun. Again, I pull one of those packs, pull them slightly back, wait until they're all there, and then I do one step forward, I pop my glaives, and I do another step back. You can see me ramp up in necrotic stacks here. I've got 32 stacks, so at some point you just get unhealable. The reason I went up that high is because AMS was off of cooldown. It only just came back on cooldown. But I wasn't taking enough damage to be scared for my life. It's something that I'll do a few more times during this corridor. Right, one of the things you want to get into the habit of doing is you want to pull as many things as you can with the similar amount of health while still being able to survive, right? So even though it's a plus 20, and you could take it, like we have 16 minutes left, which is a ridiculously high amount of time for this part of the dungeon in a 20. So you could very easily just pull 2 horses at the same time there. But all the horses have the same amount of health. I play with this druid almost exclusively, so I know what type of throughput he can do. I know that the DPS that we bring, you can see Iris here and Fola there. I know how competent they are at dodging and at not standing and stuff. So it's not scary at all to pull bigger packs. On the Discord, you can always hear mostly me and Druid talk about what we are going to do. It's very important that you have good communication between your tank and your healer, especially on necrotic weeks, because when I can reset my own stacks with AMS, which is something I'm doing right here, you just saw me activate AMS. I'm not gaining any more stacks, even though I am being attacked. And then as soon as AMS is over, or at least that's what it should be, as soon as AMS is over, you'll lose all your stacks and you don't have to get scared. Now, one of the things that these chargers do is they do a stomp, and you would think that that stomp would be, it's called trampling stomp. You would think that the stomp would be physical damage because it's a horse that stomps on the floor. It's unfortunately not. It is magic damage, and that being magic damage burned through my AMS, my anti-magic shell, so I could not reset my stacks. Usually we wouldn't harrow on the horse, but because we were going so fast and we have 13 minutes left, we did here harrow on the horse. Now this horse is sometimes very scary for tanks. It's not as scary for DKs, especially not if you have spec'd into that rune tap ability. The way that this boss works is that you want to be very careful as soon as he jumps off of his horse. He has 2 main abilities when he does jump off his horse. One of them for the tank is Mortal Strike, and the other one is Shared Suffering. Mortal Strike, what it does is that it puts a debuff on you for and what the debuff does is that it removes your health. No, it lowers your health by 50% for the duration. However, you saw that he just cast it, and I did not get the debuff. And I didn't get the debuff because let's pause it real quick right here. I didn't get the debuff because I used my AMS, and again, the way that AMS is worded is that it prevents the application of harmful effects. I just got a very interesting question from Extinction for tips about Mage Frost Nova use. I'll go into that very shortly in a second, because it ties into another thing that me and my druid does. What my druid and I do. Let me go slightly back a couple of seconds before the Mortal Strike came in. So you can see Mortal Strike is incoming in 2 seconds. He Mortal Strikes, I use my AMS, and I did not get the Mortal Strike debuff. That means that I have an absolute metric ton of health. That also means I can take Shared Suffering alone. You see that the Shared Suffering here on a plus 20 Tyrannical only took me to about 40% health. The reason why it only took me to about 40% health is because I used my Rune Tap, which is a 40% mitigation. I used Vampiric Blood, which increases my health by 35%, and I used Icebound Fortitude, which is another 30% mitigation. So I took lots less damage, and I had a ton more health. If you do have that Mortal Strike debuff, you don't have that ton of health that you need to survive that. After this boss fight, Extinction, I'll go into Frost Nova use. Right here, you can see I'm trying to position him away from the group so that the Mortal Strike will only hit me. Then I AMS. I do actually clip my druid, but because I AMS, I do not get the 50% Mortal Strike debuff. Shared Suffering, you can see right down here that I use both of my Rune Tap and my Vampiric Blood. On Discord, I asked my druid for Barkskin, which will perform the role of my personal Icebound Fortitude, and again I only go to about 40% health, which I can instantly heal back up with a well-timed Death Strike. In the future, I could definitely learn about my personal positioning here, because I do end up clipping my druid with that Mortal Strike debuff, so he does get a ton of damage, and he also will have 50% less health, so if he does get clipped by anything else, he will just die. One of the things that you've seen during this boss fight as well is that the debuff that he puts onto people when he goes into like when he jumps on his horse, he does I think it's called Tangible Presence or Tangible something. He will put a magic debuff on all, like your entire group, and then he will then that debuff will just keep ticking for ridiculous amounts of damage. The way to remove the debuff from the entire group is to dispel the correct person. That by itself is one of the reasons why you would want to be on Discord with each other. At the end of that boss fight, by the way, I'd also totally messed up because I ended up the fight with 0 blood shield, 0 bone shield charges, and having 0 bone shield charges is extremely painful. Right, so Frost Nova use and any other mass slow, mass root, mass stun effects are extremely useful on necrotic weeks, especially if you have a tank that is slow like a DK, or perhaps slow like a bear. DKs have the trick where they could get rid of their stacks with AMS. As you see here, I just AMS at the start of this pull, just so that I don't stack up too high. But let's say you're playing with a DK tank that does not have the legendary cloak. how on earth is he going to tank a necrotic week? Because there's no way that he can just properly get rid of his stacks. That's where Discord or any other type of voice chat comes into account again as well. If you are, in this case, a mage, and you see that your tank has 15 stacks of bone, 15 stacks of necrotic, then he 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 might need a mass root. He might need a mass stun. Generally, if you're not on Discord together, what you can do is you can just wait with Frost Nova until you can see your tank trying to run away. And then as soon as he runs away, that is your cue to put down your Frost Nova, stun them or root them for a little bit to give your tank a little bit of time to get that distance between him and the mobs. Because the debuff only lasts for 10 seconds. Right here, I'm trying to run away because I have already procced my Purgatory and I don't want to die. And I also have 37 stacks of Necrotic, but I did not realize that these Wardens were unslowable. So what I did is on Discord I called for a taunt on the Wardens. Our Druid taunted one of the Wardens with Bear Form, as he is running Bear Affinity for this dungeon, and our lovely Hunter uses Growl with this pet on the other big guy, which gives me the chance to run away and reset my stacks. Personally, this is a situation that almost never comes up, that stuff is unslowable, but it definitely helps to know when you can and when you cannot slow. Right here, I'll shortly go into how we are going to tackle the Morose fight. I hope that was a good answer for you, Extinction. For any really high keys, I strongly advise to get on a Discord. So anything 17 or above, I would definitely advise you to get on a voice chat. Partly because it helps out calling interrupt rotations. It helps out calling for stuns and for mass stuns. With my Druid, I always, if I need to reset my stacks, I will call out for a typhoon. No, not for a typhoon. For a vortex, because vortex has about the same use as Frost Nova for you, as it will slightly slow the mobs, and as soon as they leave the vortex, they will get grabbed back into it once, and then they can run out of it again. It just helps to give your tank an option to book it and run away. I'm also using the Tightening Grasp talent in this dungeon, because it does reduce the cooldown of your Gorfin's Grasp, but that's not really the reason why I use it. It also makes it so that your Death and Decay slows all of the mobs that are in your Death and Decay by 70%. So even then, even without being on Discord with people, you can actually also try to actively help yourself if you do not have a Mess Cloak. Right here, we have Morose and his 4 mobs. We have Baroness, who will mana drain your healer. We have Crispin with his big AoE. We have Robin, who I call him Ravager guy, but he throws out the weapon just like the first boss in Halls of Valor. And then right there we have Druger. What we're going to do is we are going to kill Druger first, as we do have a melee DPS, and Druger will do the very nasty whirlwind. And I don't want my melee DPS to get absolutely destroyed by him, so we pull the lady over, we trap Crispin, we trap Darius, and we let Druger jump to us, because he does jump to someone Then we try to destroy Druger first, followed by Lady. Make sure to do interrupt the Baroness as well, as her mana drain cast will literally wipe you if you don't interrupt it. Then as soon as both of those are dead, I will grip over Crispin, and that's the point where in this try it goes wrong, as we forgot to pick up a third trap to trap Darius again after we pull over Crispin, because the traps only last for about 70 seconds. Let's give it a go. Right here, I kept on my glaives because then you can see me. You can see me here. You can see me burst about 2 million DPS there for a little while the glaives were up. It just helps out to kill all of this stuff as fast as possible. I'm trying to keep my bone shield charges active. I am stood in melee with the rest because I want to destroy a whirlwind guy. As soon as whirlwind guy is at about, like, let's say 10% health, our rogue moved over to Baroness because his defensive cooldown ran out, and me in the range just to finish off whirlwind guy. Then here we try to finish off Dorothy. I should be leeching as often as possible. I am unfortunately not, which is definitely something I could work on. Dorothy is dead, pulled over Crispin. Then here you see me actually targeting Darius to re-trap him, but you can also see that my trap is on cooldown. This is where it all goes to hell. We do get Belraz off on me, but we also get absolutely destroyed because it still is a 20 Tyranical key. Right here, if we would have just properly done this fight, and the fight here would have been won if we had one more person with a trap, or if we had our rogue ready with the trap to re-trap Darius. Then we would have killed Crispin very smoothly. When Crispin was dead, we would have pulled out. We would have pulled down the final guy. When final guy was dead, we could have finished off Morose. We do take a lot more trash here now, but getting the final 10% of trash would not cost us over 2 minutes. So we absolutely lost the key right then and there. I'm going to speed up because you can see that this recording is 1 hour 13 minutes. We are at 34 minutes right now. And we only end up killing Morose about right here at the end. So I will just skip all the wipes. Got to give my video player a second to load everything, as I am playing on a semi-potato. Alright, I think this is probably our final try. Yeah, we're waiting for about at like 40-ish minutes. The time was depleted so far that it was only really worth for us to wait for heroism every single time that we tried Darius. Right before this final try, let's see if I can go back slightly to see what because I did change talents. I think this is where I just got back. This is where we died again because we got destroyed. And then right here you can see me. Oh, you can't see me, Deathgate. I probably have already swapped my talents then. What I did is I swapped out of Spectral Deflection for this boss because there's not much constant, like there's not much burst damage going on. It's all very uh, uh, very easily dealt with basically, so you don't really need the deflection. I've also spec'd out of Rune Tap for the exact same reason. There's not much burst damage going on, so it's better to have Foul Bulwark on this fight. In about 25 seconds you can see us go for another pull, and I think that is the pull that is that finishes off this run. Here you could see me click off that 10 seconds of the stamina buff and go back to the Fell Focuser. Because my stamina flask was nearly going to run out, and then I always prefer going back to the Fell Focuser real quick until I die, and then I'll go, unless I can instantly go back to Fell Focuser and it's not on cooldown, I will usually then go for a flask. Again, you can see us starting off with Dorothy. I am staying on Dorothy real quick until the first Mana Drain cast, interrupt the Mana Drain cast. Then I help out on a Druger. Druger gets absolutely melted by our DPS. We continue on onto Dorothy. Wait until Dorothy's dead. At this point we just kick every single cast that she has, or at least we try to, and we save one of our kicks for the Mana Drain specifically. It's generally a good idea to have the Mana Drain be kicked by someone that has a long cooldown interrupt, which like a Hunter, for example. Hunter's interrupt is 24 seconds. You could also see our Gnome Hunter. She is stood on the platform a decent amount of the fight, because from there she can just re-trap Darius every single time. The reason that we didn't do this in the first place was literally just because we didn't think about it. If we would have thought about it earlier, this fight would have been very different. Right there you could see that our mage actually DC'd during the fight, which is why he didn't move out of the big AoE. And from here on out, it's just me wanting to reset my my cooldown very quick, so our bear tank, or our druid taunted off me real quick. At 60%, Morose breaks all the traps. We thought that it also broke Hunter Trap, but it ends up not being the case, so you can't just literally keep up Hunter Trapping. Raven here, that is our mage, so he is coming back right now. And 60%, Morose gets rid of all the ghost traps, so everything that you have trapped will get out of its trap. But that doesn't count for Hunter Trap, so we can't just keep Robin trapped for the remainder of the fight. Here you can see that I've given us all leech, and that definitely helps out with our DPS as well. Our rogue got 2 stacks of the blood debuff, the bleeding debuff real quick, so we decided to just let him die and battle res him. We had 2 battle reses available to us, so it was no problem at all. That's me hitting Purgatory. We were super scared here that we were gonna die again, because at this point we had been in this dungeon for about an hour and 10 minutes. But we do restabilize. And that is basically the run. We kill him here in about 10%. When you do kill him, you also destroy all of the remaining, all of the remaining ads. And that was it, basically. Lower Karazhan, plus 20, Tyrannical, Teeming, and Necrotic as a Blood DK tank. Thank you all very much for watching, and I hope that you've learned a little bit of the tanking and of how to deal with Necrotic.